to see what you are doing. I'm able to see from my side to see what you are doing. It's very possible to see from check from my side to see what you are actually doing. Sheila is on and off. Sheila is on and off. I think she's having connectivity issues. But welcome to this session. Let me share. So I will also ensure you do the activities. I will check and see your progress. But after this 1 hour, you are supposed to go into the portal and see the activities. This is week 5. Literature and propaganda is topic 5. And by now, we are supposed to be around week 4. So take time, try as much as possible to do something on those activities, watch the videos, write something on some of those activities, occupy yourself so that you also read the books to prepare for your exams. But 40% will come from those activities. But next week you must, no, tomorrow you should present on the proverbs, the task on the proverbs, both of you. So once you come in, you will present. And I hope you have also done the reporting and other administrative responsibilities you are supposed to undertake to ensure that you prepare for, you are registered or you are booked for exams. So let us look at literature and propaganda. Literature and propaganda. So in this unit, we look at how literature intersects with different fields of knowledge and also branches of society. So week 5, we want to look at literature and propaganda generally. So while literature is often celebrated for its capacity to explore the nuances of human experience, it can also function as a potent vehicle for mass persuasion. So when I talk about propaganda, we are talking about ability of literature to persuade a large number of people. Literature. Now, why do you think literature can be used to persuade? Why do you think literature? Why do you think songs, novels, proverbs, drama can be used to persuade the audience? Why do you think literature can be used to persuade the audience? Anyone to try? Why do you think literature has the capacity to persuade the audience? Yes, anybody to try?
Okay, I can say
Mm.
that because if you look at the songs and the plays,
Mm.
they always target the human feelings, emotions.
Yes.
Yes, they touch humans emotionally, and
Mm.
it is easy to control
Mm.
a group or a mass of people
Mm.
through the touch of their emotions, just like the way Sarafina used to the freedom songs in South Africa, the way
Mm.
they were using to fight for independence. The songs could really motivate individuals. to even
Mm.
face the monarch. Because by then they were, you know, they were derived by emotions.
Mm.
A song can make you wake up and go to the street.
Mm.
Yes,
Yes.
emotions they touch it
Yeah,
emotionally.
they touch the emotions. They touch the emotions. And also there is that element of style. Style enables literature to persuade because of the style. And of course, the style, even to talk about the songs you are talking about, the style that is ingrained in the songs, yeah? It is the style that makes them very interesting to the audience. While normal communication is just dry, literature has the capacity to attract the audience and therefore persuade the audiences. In fact, literature arose from rhetoric. It arose from rhetoric, the art of persuasion. Especially the stylistic aspects of literature, they arose from rhetoric. If you read Mugubi 2017, he goes into the history of stylistics and he argues that actually literature arose from rhetoric, the art of persuasion. So the question of style, the question of emotions, and okay, they bolster the persuasive abilities of literature. And that's why literature becomes a good ground for propaganda. For example, at independence, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta wanted to rally Kenyans through the philosophy of Harambe. And so Daudi Kabaka was very much used in singing such songs. Harambe, Harambe, tuimbe pamoja. Harambe, Harambe, tuimbe pamoja. Harambe, Harambe, tuimbe pamoja. Tujenge nchi yetu. And you see, if somebody just gives a speech about Harambe and then he says, Harambe is very important. Through Harambe, we come together, we pool resources. That's a very dry speech. But when you give a singer like Daudi Kabaka to now sing, he persuades the audience to love Harambe even more. And that's why, because of the stylistic elements, literature becomes a very great source of propaganda. And that's why governments also like literature. Literature can carry messages that can persuade a great number of people. So in this framework, literature ceases to be a site of dialogue and instead becomes propaganda. So at this level now, it's no longer about dialogue. There's an ideology that the work of art wants to ram down our throat. There's an ideology that the work of art wants to push down our throat. And so it is no longer about dialogue. It becomes a closed system designed to reinforce a specific dogma by suppressing dissenting perspectives. Because in the propaganda, you don't want to talk about opposition. When UDA wants to bring forth its propaganda. You know, it is a closed system. It is no longer interested in what the opposition will say. Yeah. So the same way, when you write a work of art as a propaganda, you don't, entertain dissenting views, but you believe that your view is the best. Your view is the best. So the style in such a work becomes very different becomes very different from our work, which allows discussion and conversation or dissenting views. So, what are our expected learning outcomes in this particular session? To evaluate the structural mechanisms that silence competing perspectives, thereby transforming polyphonic literature into singular ideological propaganda. So, in this unit, we will not look at the polyphonic nature, the different voices that come out through a work of art. No, here we are not interested in the polyphonic novels. We are interested in what we call monologic novels. It's about one voice. So a novel or a work of art can just have one ideology which it brings down to the audience to construct arguments demonstrating how marginalized writers strategically deploy aesthetic tools to dismantle hegemonic truths. So sometimes when they want to fight certain power structures, we move away from dialogic novels, dialogic conversations. That's what we mean. we move away from dialogic styles. We have to reinforce. So for a work of art to have propaganda, the style must be different. It must be a bit preachy. It must hold on one particular ideology and no other. Number three, analyze aspects of monologism with reference to the atomic bomb and its effects in Ibus's Black Rain. So it's not just Black Rain, of course, we look at other works and then demonstrate how specific thematic choices present Caucasian chalk circle as a Marxist propaganda. So here we look at two books, but our major one, I think, is Black Rain, but the Caucasian chalk circle will be used to show how literature can function as propaganda. How literature can function as propaganda. So the nexus between literature, propaganda, and ideology lies in the capacity of narrative of narrative to either naturalize or disrupt the pure structures of a given society. So literature may serve as a tool to destroy existing ideologies or reinforce them. So literature can reinforce existing ideologies or it can destroy existing ideologies. And for it to fight these ideologies, the style cannot be the same as those novels which are just writing about normal issues, because this particular writer takes an argument and reinforces it. So from a Marxist perspective, literature often serves as a site of counter-hegemony, exposing the exploitative nature of capitalist production. So like when you look at Ngugi's I Will Marry When I Want, the ideology here is Marxism and is fighting capitalism. And so because of this, this work must be mostly, it is monologic. It will not allow other voices, but it will privilege the Marxist voice. So in propaganda, we are saying a writer will focus on a dominant ideology which they want to bring down to the audience, which they want to bring down to the audience. And all other characters who oppose the ideology are seen in the negative light. That is what we mean. So by highlighting the dispossession of laborers, Gug uses literature as intentional propaganda to instill socialist consciousness. So in I Will Marry When I Want, Gugi is a socialist and he wants to bring down the Marxist propaganda and characterization and even the themes. They are all influenced by the Marxist ideology. And that's what we are calling monologism. Anybody who goes against this particular ideology is seen in the negative. So one of our major theorists we need to learn about in this particular topic is Mikhail Bakhtin. Mikhail Bakhtin. This is the picture of Mikhail Bakhtin. He's the one who came up with the concept of monologism and dialogism. So at master's level, you realize that we don't just discuss books in isolation. If you check my past lessons, I begin with theory, then I end with books. Because theoretical framework is very important in the creation of knowledge. For example, just talking about propaganda, without Mikhail Bakhtin, it will make your argument very weak. At undergraduate, you can talk about propaganda as a theme without this. But at master's level, we need to bolster our argument. We need to strengthen our argument by a theoretical work. And some of you may use some of these theories even in your master's. That's why I keep referring to theoretical framework to start exposing you to how theory is used in the creation of knowledge in the area of literature and even and other fields in further studies. So what is monologism? According to Bakhtin, monologism serves as a theoretical foil to dialogism. Yeah. So he came up with the concept of dialogism, but then as a foil, as the contrary, as the opposite, he now talked about monologism. In this lesson, we will not focus on dialogism because we will teach you theory in literature. So in this lesson, we'll focus on monologism, not dialogism. Yeah. So in monologism, this is about a single ultimate truth. Yeah. Or authorial consciousness. The writer reinforces a single truth or a single ideology. He believes that there is one ultimate ideology, which dominates the whole work. It dominates the whole work. It permeates through characters and themes, and it silences all other voices. Mm. For example, if it is feminism, we'll look at feminism next week under the same topic. Yeah, is like all other characters who don't adhere to feministic voice are silenced. They are not given any opportunity to argue. Yeah? If it is a religious work, the writer it will install certain religious ideals, and all characters who go against those religious ideals are silenced or they are seen as useless. They have no voice. Yeah, they have no voice. Yeah, and that's what we mean by monologism. It's one of the major theories. If you want to bring an ideology down to the audience as a writer, you use monologism. Yeah, but most people don't like it because they say their work is preachy. Their work is preachy. Like Petals of Blood, it is not very famous like a grain of wheat because Ngugi is very Marxist. In fact, one of the um, critics, it must be Taban Lyong, who said, is Ngugi a political scientist or a novelist? Because if you look at Petals of Blood, Marxism runs through very seriously. He even talks about the workers, even Devil on the cross. You find him using words like workers, and that is a Marxist tone. That is Marxist tone. Proletariat, the bourgeois, the workers. At the end of the book, in the Petals of Blood, see him saying he wants the workers to go back to the forest and all that. And so in monologism, the author, and sometimes he even intrudes and comments on the story to give way, to show his argument. He just interrupts to comment on the story and even commenting on the characters directly. There's a writer called Honoré de Balzac. If you look at a novel like Old Goriot by Honoré de Balzac, he really does not like Old Goriot. He does not like that character because he hated the philosophies of life of people during the post-Napoleonic era in France. And so because of that, Honore really hated the culture of the people and everything at that time. He sees the French society as a society in a dilemma, a society in a predicament that cannot end because of the Napoleonic Wars. And so this writer, Honoré de Balzac, he condemns old Goriot, he condemns his daughters, and he uses authorial intrusion to comment directly on characters and on the story. Yeah? So in monologism, we are trying to say that the author is very overbearing and he has an ideology which he rams down the throat of the reader, and he wants all of us to take it. Yeah, that's what I mean by monologism. And this is one of the central style that is key, that is very, very key in propaganda. Now, in literature, even as we talk about propaganda, don't see it very negatively. Don't see it very negatively because um, sometimes we need propaganda. Like look at the slave narratives. Look at the slave narratives. Most of the writers were writing against slavery. They wanted to show how negative slavery was. And indeed, slavery was very negative. So in such a case, we don't expect the narrative of Frederick Douglass, for example, to entertain a lot of other voices. The writer does not want us to hear the voice of the slave masters because by nature they were wicked, and we agree that most of them were very wicked. When Hisham Mata is writing about Libya, he's writing about the dictatorship of Gaddafi, and he does not allow us to hear anything about the better side of Gaddafi. He is determined. He wants Gaddafi to be forgotten from the history of Libya. And that's why when you look at the return, you do not see anything negative, positive about Muammar Gaddafi. There is no character apart from maybe Saif, but he just comes in the negative. Yeah, and that is the best example of monologism. So propaganda is not necessarily negative. Where there are things that oppress, maybe men oppressing women, or slave masters oppressing slaves, or women oppressing men, yeah, then the author will use monologism to allow him to show the negative effect of that particular thing. So I don't want you to see monologism as something very negative. For example, if you want to spread, maybe you are writing, you are a Christian, and you want to use your work to also spread your faith, yeah, or you are a Muslim and you want to spread your faith through a work. Literature can persuade. Literature can persuade. Yeah. And so such a writer, yeah, who is writing to persuade the audience to Christianity or Islam, they will have to use monologism because you also want to preach, yeah, your message. As we saw, according to Plato, we'll see in the last session, according to Plato, an artist, yeah, an artist is inspired, yeah, by something spiritual. According to Plato, art does not just come, art comes through inspiration of a certain spirit. And that's why literature can be used actually to preach either Islam, to preach Marxism, like Ngugi preaches a lot of Marxism through his works, and I will show you very soon. If we just, if and also if we did basic theories, you will see how Ngugi preaches Marxism through his works. So literature and propaganda. That's why as we read literature at our level, don't read it naively. Don't be naive. Literature has an ideology underlying it. And that's why styles like monologism, they tend to bring down such ideologies. So if a writer is gay, for example, he may want to push such an agenda through the work of art. And that is also an ideology. Yeah? If a writer is a Marxist like Ngugi Thiong'o, he may want to bring that. And monologism is one of the styles through which such ideas can be brought down. Also, if you want to fight something like slave narratives, most slave narratives were monologic because the writers were fighting for liberation of the slaves, emancipation of the slaves, and they wanted the abolitionist movement to hate slavery, to abolish it. And that's why they hate to apply monologism. So this is what Mikhail Bakhtin writes. He says that monologism at its extreme denies the existence of outside itself, of another consciousness with equal rights and equal responsibilities. That means it does not allow any other voice contrary to the major ideology in the work of art. It does not allow any divergent voice. And if any divergent voice comes, it will be exhibited in the negative. For example, look at Blossoms of Savannah. Blossoms of Savannah. The writer is such a serious feminist that any man who is exhibited as good has to die early. Has to die early. And even Olarengoi, when he comes to try and save Resian, is like, because according to the tenets of radical feminism, I think it's Frank 1987 who says, in every patriarchal society, the worst enemy of a woman is a man. The worst enemy of a woman is a man. That is radical feminism. And so when Olarengoi comes and tries to save Resian, the writer has to turn Olarengoi into a negative character by trying to rape Resian. Because according to radical feminism, that is the voice, and it will not allow any man to be positive. When Pamwa tries to be positive, is given tribalism, for example, refuses to marry Taiwo because of some funny reasons, and then after that, he has to die early. That is how you know monologism. Yeah, it does not allow another consciousness with equal rights or equal responsibilities, another with equal rights. That means it does not allow any divergent voice within the work. With the monologic approach, in its extreme or pure form, another person remains wholly or merely an object of consciousness and not another consciousness. So Bakhtin is trying to tell us that this voice is very, very domineering. And these are the tenets of monologism that enable propaganda. One, single authorial consciousness. Characters do not possess autonomous ideological lives. Instead, they serve as objects or mouthpieces used to illustrate the author's singular truth. So all characters must align to the author's ideology. All of them. Look at even that Frederick, the narrative of Frederick Douglass. Yeah, if you look at that narrative, everything is slavery is negative. So all characters must go that way. There is no even one slave master. Yeah, and even the one who tries to be good at the end, his ideas will just be overturned because the narrative is all slave masters are evil. Like there's one called Beloved. Sheila, I think you remember Beloved, Beloved by Toni Morrison. You remember Sheila? Beloved by Toni Morrison. Um, Beloved by Toni Morrison. Even the schoolmaster, when the schoolmaster comes and tries to be good, at the end, his good ideas are overthrown by the schoolmaster overthrows the good ideas of the benevolent slave master who was there before. And also, we'll also look at Caucasian chalk circle, and you will see how the Marxist ideology permeates through the story. So there is a single authorial consciousness. Sometimes I also use this style. If you look at my novel, The Pearl on the Horizon, The Pearl on the Horizon is based on the Christian message. And so because of that, all characters must align to the Christian philosophy, and those who oppose it, like Madame Victorine, are tainted negatively from the beginning to the very end. Yeah, so that's a good example of a monologic work of art. Then number two, finalization and the last word. It treats reality as a closed, finished product. Reality is what the author has determined. If the ideology is Marxism, that is the reality. So a monologic voice claims the last word on the subject, person, or event, denying the possibility that others might offer a valid or differing interpretation. So one ideology dominates. There is nothing contrary to that ideology. Then the truth Istina versus truth pravada. Monologism prioritizes Istina, yeah, enforcing a theoretical model where events must conform to existing rules. So all events must conform to the rules and dogma. That's why we are saying if a novel has a religious message, the dogma must be there. A novel like Secrets, the writer is a Muslim, so he does not like what the people are doing, the gayism within the Somali society. The author is a Muslim. So because of the Islamic religion, he does not like gayism, bestiality, and all acts that run counter to the Islamic ideals. And so a book like Secrets, if you look at it, the writer is trying to say that because of the wickedness the Somali people are committing, God will send a judgment. God will send a judgment. So a novel like Secrets by Nuruddin Farah, if you look at it, there is some dogma behind it. Events must conform to the existing rules. So if there is a religion, if there is an ideology, the writer will want everything that's against this ideology to be rejected. Then centripetal force and objectification. So there is monologic discourse pulls everything towards the center, towards the ideology. And so those who do not follow that ideology are authorized. They are marginalized. Yeah, they are marginalized. And that's why we are saying men like Pamuat who try to be good, they are marginalized because according to the radical feminist voice, men are enemies of women. According to radical voice, the worst enemy of a woman in a patriarchal society is a man. And so those who try to be nice to women, like Pamwat, or Kembo in the river and the source, they are marginalized. They have to die early for the major voice to dominate, for the major voice to dominate. I hope you are getting it. Yeah. So literature has an element of propaganda, and we need to be critical, even as we read. At our level, especially as I said, we are not just here to sugarcoat and praise writers. No, we are scientists, and scientists, we use existing theories to interrogate or examine these works of art. And that's why monologism becomes very important in the analysis of these works of propaganda. So the relationship between monologism and propaganda, so there is a relationship in literature, is one of structural dependency. So they depend on each other. Whenever you see propaganda in a work of art, there is a monologism around it. Yeah? So in Mikhail Bakhtin's framework, monologism is the linguistic and ideological condition that allows propaganda to function as absolute truth. So Marxism becomes absolute truth in most of Ngugi's works, which I don't like. Yeah, personally, I don't agree. Yeah, I do not agree with some aspects of Marxism. Like if you look at Caucasian Chalk Circle, also there is a lot of Marxism, and so uh, it's like they want to make it the absolute truth, but we say no. We say no. We cannot just take it. So when literature shifts from a site of open-ended inquiry to a tool of mass persuasion, it moves from a dialogic mode to a monologic one. Like when you look at even The Return by Hisham Matt, and by now you should have read The Return. Please read those books. I told you some books are compulsory, like The Return. You just have to read The Return. Let me tell these people. Yeah, so as I was saying, that one voice becomes the absolute truth, which is not necessarily truth, as we are going to. So how does monologism ensure there is propaganda in a work of art? One, suppression of heteroglossia. Suppression of heteroglossia. So propaganda requires elimination of diversity and other voices. So heteroglossia, we are saying other ideologies are suppressed completely. The writer does not allow. Like now, the best example I've been using is this question of radical feminism. Yeah, where you just say that all men are oppressive, all men are that such generation, they are perverts. The same thing you find even in Nawal El Sadawi's God Dies by the Nile. Men are either rapists, um, they practice bestiality. They also practice they have sex with corpses. Yeah, men are brutal, and there is not even a single male character who is positive. Hmm? So all other voices are suppressed. That's what we are meaning by suppression of heteroglossia. If you look at the Caucasian chalk circle, you find even robbers like Irakli are seen as very important in the society because Irakli takes cows from rich farmers and takes them to the to the grandmother. And because of that, he's seen as a good character, being entertained by Azdag, just because, according to Marxism, a robber plays a very important role in balancing the wealth between the rich and the poor. You see, can you imagine such an idea, which really goes against the morals and ethical values, of our societies? But yet, voices that can critique this in the work are totally suppressed, Of course, at the end, the Grand Duke comes back, at least in that book, at the end, the Grand Duke, who was a capitalist, comes back, which shows he's a bit positive. But throughout the play, you discover that heteroglossia, other voices are suppressed. And it's like all rich people are seen as wicked, as brought out through Natella, and then Abashwili, and all that. It's like there's no rich man who is good as such. The fat prince, they are all bad, although the fat prince leads the revolution. But most of the rich people, you don't find any, and we cannot just say that all rich people are evil. That's just trying to bring out the class issue, which Ngugi also emphasizes in Petals of Blood. All the rich characters are wicked. Also in Devil on the Cross, almost all rich people in Devil on the Cross are just wicked and wicked. That's why we are saying there is suppression of heteroglossia. No other voices are left to speak number. And then for political or religious message to be effective as propaganda, it must present its ideology as the only logical reality. It's like Marxism is seen as the only solution to the Kenyan society. But at the end, I think Ngugi does not achieve his vision because Kenya does not go Marxist through and through. And at the end, by 1990, Marxism collapsed in the world. And maybe that is why Ngugi could not even win the Nobel Prize because of having too much of that Marxist ideology. That's what I'm saying. As a critique, when we learn these philosophies, we'll be able to see even weaknesses in our writers. So for you as a scientist, you are not just here to say, oh, Ngugi. No, read his works and subject his works to an objective analysis. An objective analysis. Authoritative discourse versus internally persuasive discourse. So propaganda is authoritative. It demands unconditional allegiance and cannot be changed or challenged. Cannot be changed or challenged. It stands apart for the reader, existing as a finished object. Yeah. So, for example, if you are writing a work and you want to spread your religion, your religious values will be absolute. Yeah. And you will not want people to argue because the way religions are. One time I wrote a work, and my first novel, one of my first novels, comes in the launch. It criticized some aspects of the Islamic religion, and I faced a lot of challenges. I faced a lot of challenges with Islamic audiences. Okay. But it did not. Okay, of course, it also had some Christian issues. It also had some Christian ideology and all that. But what we are saying some ideologies are very authoritative and it cannot be challenged. Then objectification or objectification or otherization of the other. So in monologic propaganda, characters are often reduced to archetypes or symbols of the ideology they represent. So if you're writing a Christian novel, then there's a character who will represent Christianity. Like even the question chalk circle, Natella represents capitalism, and Grusha represents communism. So in nationalistic epic, not so characters are not really living, but they are just symbols. They just symbols of the writer's ideology. Like Shylock in Merchant of Venice. Anyone who has read Merchant of Venice, what will you say about Shylock? And Antonio represents who? Antonio represents who? Anybody who has read Merchant of Venice? So when you look at this book, Merchant of Venice, um, there is the Christian ideology. Yeah, yeah. There is also anti-Semitism, Christianity and anti-Semitism. And then you have the Jews on the other side. Yeah. So Shylock represents the Jewish religion and the Jewish community. Antonio represents Christianity. So in this book, there's a lot of monologism that really controls the Merchant of Venice by the end of the story, Shylock has to lose because, according to Shakespeare, the Christian religion in Venice, yeah, is good. But when you look at what they are doing against Shylock, yeah, there are very many bad things that Shylock complains about. But at the end, the story presents Shylock as a very wicked person, yet he's actually being oppressed. He's a victim of anti-Semitism. Then finalization and the last word. Monologism provides the stylistic tools for this finalization, closing the world of the novel so that the reader cannot imagine an alternative ending. You cannot even imagine anything else. Resian has to win. You cannot have an alternative ending where Oloisdori wins. Resian has to win. A different and so on. So the text becomes a closed circuit that constantly reinforces the central dogma. You just want to condemn Oloisdori completely, but you don't know the context from which he was raised. You have to condemn Olaringoi, but you don't consider the cultural setting and the ecological setting from which these people have grown in. Because when you look at Oloisdori, he has been trained as a Moran. And as a Moran, they have to be strong to protect society. You look at the culture of the Maasai community, singleness is condemned. So women have to get married, some even pleading with Oloisdori to marry them. What Oloisdori is saying is it true because of the cultural setting, but he has to lose. Yeah, why? Because of the monologic feminist voice. Yeah, that's what we call monologism. So question chalk circle as a Marxist propaganda, So this book mostly, maybe who can tell me something? Anybody who has read Caucasian chalk circle? Anybody who has read Caucasian chalk circle? Sheila, have you ever read Caucasian chalk circle? Felix, have you read it?
No, no, yes, just some bit part of the introduction, sometimes some years ago.
Mm.
Mm.
Sheila, have you read Caucasian chalk circle? So when you look at this book, they are talking about Grusha. Um, Grusha, there is a revolution and Grusha, of course, Natella Abashwili, Georgia Abashwili is killed. And then the wife Natella runs away, leaving the child. She carries the clothes and material things and then abandons Michael. And then Grusha now takes Michael and runs away from the palace, going to the northern mountains, Caucasus Mountains. On the way, Grusha passes through very many challenges, very many challenges. The iron shards or the soldiers want to kill the child. Grusha has to fight to save the child from the soldiers at the Rotten Bridge, which is about 2,000 meters high. Grusha risks his life and her life and the life of the child on the Rotten Bridge up the precipice. But actually, although it swings east, west, and all that, she's able to cross the bridge and goes to the brother who stays there. I don't know the name of the brother, but I've forgotten the brother. Reaching there, Aniko, the sister-in-law, does not like Grusha because Grusha lies that Michael belongs to is actually his own, is her own child, and yet Michael was the Natella was the mistress child, but she has to lie at least because this is a royal child who is being pursued by the fat prince who has just overthrown the government. And so she has to lie that Michael is hers, and because of that, she's stigmatized by Aniko, because Aniko is a Christian and does not like a child born of wedlock. And because of the problems that are the complaints by Aniko, she has to marry a dying man. There's a man called Jasap who is dying, but wants to marry before he dies. So they have a short ceremony because they said he will just die, and then at least this lady Russia will stay in Jasap's home as a symbol, because according to the culture of these people, a child has to have a roof on his head. So once Jasap dies, at least they will say Michael had a father. But after the wedding, Jasap does not die. Jasap hears that the war is ending, and Jasap does not really die. And after that, he now starts asking for conjugal rights and all that. And this is a man that Grusha did not even love. But now he has to marry this man because of Michael. So Grusha suffers a lot because of Michael. And then when the war ends, Natella now comes to claim the child. Natella says the child is hers because she needs the child to inherit the Georgi Abashvili estate. And so the case goes to Azdag, who is now the communist judge, and he has to make a decision about who is the right mother to Michael. Is it Grusha, the one who adopted the child and suffered for the child, or Natella, who is the blood brother, the blood mother, but abandoned the child? And after listening to the case, Azdag gives the child to Grusha because Grusha suffered for the child, much as she is not the biological mother. But the prologue of this particular play, if you look at the prologue, Galinsky and Rosa Luxemburg, they are quarreling over a piece of land. And the reason why Galinsky wants the land because it has a plan on how to use the land. It shows the plan, we will grow this, we'll employ this kind of people, and that's why Galinsky wants the land. Rosa Luxemburg says we want the land because it's our ancestral land. It is our ancestral land. The air smells good. The water is sweet. Home, east or west, home is the best. That's why we want the land. Yeah. And the man who is deciding over the case from Moscow, I think, gives the land to Galinsky. That because although they are not, it's not ancestral land, they have a plan on how to use it. Yeah. So the prologue of this particular play is the real play. Because after that prologue, a man called Chedze comes to sing a song of the Caucasian chalk circle to grace the occasion. So the whole play is a song which was sung during the land settlement meeting. Yeah, yeah, to grace the occasion. And so the singer is trying to say that the question of ancestral land does not matter. That the true owner of the land is the one who has a plan on how to use it. It's not about ancestral land. So Grusha just represents, Grusha represents Galinsky, those who have a plan to use the land. That the child is yours if you can provide for the child and take responsibility. A child is not yours because he's biological, you are a biological parent. That's what they are trying to argue. So the question of ancestral lands does not matter according to to this play. Yeah, that a child, the right parent is the one who takes care of the child, not the biological parent. So he's just trying to say that ancestral land, going to say Bungoma is ours or Muranga is ours because it's ancestral land. That land belongs to those who can make better use of it. So before I continue, comment. Do you agree with the central message in this book that land belongs to those who can make use of it? Would you agree with such a message? That it is not actually ancestral land, or a child belongs to those who can provide. It's not being biological parent that matters. Would you agree with that? 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 And knowing the ideological background, the historical and ideological background of this book will help you to understand the message even better. But let me hear your comments before we finish. Would you agree that the best owner of the land is the one who can make use of it, is not about the ancestral? Would you agree that the best parent is the one who provides and takes care of the child, not biological? Just a comment before we continue. One comment.
Okay, what I can say,
Mm.
uh, uh, because if you look at the issue in from the Caucasian job circle where we have got the owners of the land were the Catonera, not the others. And I think if we now move from the European literature and come back to Kenya, the same happened here under capitalism. And then if you come to coast region, we have got the regional owners of the land, but you can move all the way from Mtwapa to Kilifi, a good number of kilometers. There's a bare land for which was taken by the royal family that they're the ones who can use it properly. And currently there's an estate being developed in that land, while the real owners of the land are living like quarters around. So we can see the direct effect of capitalism. And I buy the idea of where one, the biological owner of the child or the real owner of the land should own it. Because we can see how later on people suffer, just like in Kenya where we have got that idea was used immediately after independence. Land was taken. We have got a very big piece of land in Naivasha, not the Nemeas farm, because and then the real owners are suffering up to date. So I start with if you look at even the Solomonic wisdom when he's making judgment based on the two women, and Solomon uses his wisdom to identify the biological owner of the woman and give the child to the biological mother. So the real owner of a particular object should maintain it. We should not based on the ideology that who can use it better to produce a particular product or item, or the age maybe if it's a child we're talking about. So that is my take. I cannot get you.
Okay, I was asking Sheila to say something. I think I had muted. Sheila, um, you have something to say? I think I had muted myself. So I thought Sheila was not speaking, but I had muted myself. Sheila, do you have something to say? I think I had muted, so she was not getting me. Do you have any comment? Okay, okay, okay. Do you have any comment? The message here is for, it's not for Sheila. This message is for Felix. Sheila, say something if you can. Um, hmm. Sheila, if you have any comment, please, or you can comment or you can write. Yeah, so there's something Felix has mentioned about the coast, where the ancestral people have nothing. They don't have much, but there's squatters, eh? But those who can make use of the land have large tracts of land. And this is the kind of ideology that this particular play is trying to reinforce. Um, because if you look at Rosa Luxemburg, they say ancestral land is very important. They say east or west, home is best. Yeah, home is best. And actually, um, the question of ancestral land is very important. Every community was given some ancestral land. And so it's not something we can just wish away. And you see, socialism or Marxism used this ideology to evict people from their lands. There are very many people in the Soviet Union who were evicted from their lands and taken to Siberia, and they died in large numbers. And in fact, their lands were taken by Joseph Stalin and used by the state, yeah, for its own purposes. And this is the ideology that permeates Caucasian shock circle. That That's why we are saying you cannot just say that a biological parent does not matter. No, no, there is a blood connection between a biological parent and the child. And if the parent is not acting well, the government should advise and counsel them and guide them, reform them, and let them stay with their children. You cannot take a child from a mother because you are saying biological connection does not matter. No, it does. It does matter a lot because the child has the genes and the blood of the parent. The same way to ancestral lands. Ancestral lands are very important. You cannot just take Mount Kenya and you give it to Somalis and then take Kikuyus to Eastern, trying to say that Somalis have the best way of using the land. There's nothing like that. So this is propaganda, which is Marxist, and the prologue, in fact, the prologue of this play was never acted in the United States because the Americans discovered that this was a Marxist propaganda, yeah, that permeates the play. And so the story of the Caucasian chalk circle is just a metaphor to try and reinforce the message in the prologue. Yeah, the real prologue is the play where land issues are being brought out. So taking the land away from Rosa Luxemburg is actually unfair. It is an injustice because that is the ancestral land, and your land is your land. You have your title deed, you have your land, and nobody should take your land away in the pretext of giving to someone who knows how to use it. No, the sanctity of title deeds and the ownership of land should be respected, and the land should only be sold willingly. It should not be grabbed from somebody that because he has nothing. My land is my land. Whether I use it or not, I know when I will use it. And so you cannot just come and take it away from me that because someone else has a better plan to use it. That's why I'm saying this is propagandist, and it has to be deconstructed. When you read such a book, it has to be deconstructed. And so it's very monologic. There are things like class struggle. The narrative is propelled by the conflict between the proletariat, that's the Grusha, the cook, the peasants, and the bourgeois, the iron shirts, and the governor. The chaos of the cook creates violence, and the class roles are stipulated. And then there's the question of about land ownership. I've talked about that. the question of alienation, the Brecht utilizes estrangement effect to prevent the audience from emphasizing purely with characters, forcing them to instead analyze socioeconomic conditions. So everything is about socioeconomic conditions. So the Marxist theories of alienation is visible as the soldiers and servants are treated as mere commodities and tools of the state. And that is again Marxism. The iron shirts cannot question anything; they just obey orders from above. Then subversion of justice. When you look at Asdak, Asdak punishes innocent people because according to Marxism, the law is an instrument of the rich to oppress the poor. So Asdak sits on the penal code, and then just makes decisions that favor the poor against the rich. This lady called Ludovico. Ludovico has been raped, but the man who has raped Ludovico is set free just because he's poor and Ludovico is rich. This is a version of justice. Yeah? You can't just say that poor people are not necessarily holy, and rich people are not just evil. There are rich people who are holy and upright, and there are also poor people who are wicked, and there are poor people who are what? Who are upright. But this book is like all the poor are just holy and righteous, and all the rich are just wicked. That is wrong. Yeah, that's why we are saying this is a monologic book where there is one ideology. Look at the cases by Asdak, and you will be surprised how how this ideology, this misguided ideology, and this book became a set book. And I wonder, it's because we don't have critical readers in Kenya. This book became, of course, especially for a high school audience. You know, a high school audience. Look at somebody like Irakili, robber Irakili. Irakili is a robber who takes what? Who steals from the rich farmers and brings it to a poor grandmother. And according to Marxism, a robber is an important person in quotes because he balances the wealth between the rich and the poor. Eh? This is and these are some of the negative aspects of what of Marxism. And you see, Irakli just do exactly that. Yeah, and even police officers are seen as very wicked people, and then thieves like Asdak. Asdak was a rabbit thief, and later he became a judge. You see, because a thief is a very important person according to Marxism. So you can see the way this particular ideology permeates. Permeates the what? Permeates the work. Yeah. Uh, that ideology permeates the work. So the assignment for this chapter is prepare a presentation on how Ibuze challenges and at the same time reinforces propaganda in Black Rain. So the assignment is on Black Rain. But we have looked at how monologism and propaganda permeates the Caucasian chalk circle. Permeates the Caucasian chalk circle. And that's the end of our lesson. So Sheila, unless you have a question, I see Felix has dropped out. So unless you have a question, that's the end of my lesson. Any question, Sheila? So tomorrow, prepare something on Proverbs. That question on Proverbs, present shortly. Make a presentation on the Proverbs before we look at session 5. Before we look at session 5. So Sheila says you have none, and Sheila, you are not speaking. Is it because of connectivity? Because we also need you to speak in class, so that we interrogate these subjects very well. Is it because of what's wrong with your microphone? But today you have not really. Today you have been a bit stable. Your network has been stable. You only dropped out once. Um, and so on. So thank you so much for attending. Let's continue doing the activities. And then I gave you the book with all the core texts. So be reading them. And very soon we must have serious presentations on the text so that I get your marks from there. So ensure you sign the attendance. And thank you for attending. Jioni njema. Jioni njema.